Hello, ladies, and welcome to the Avanti Woman Podcast, where we empower, connect, and build women to move forward, feel confident, and thrive in healthcare, finance, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy. I'm Nairy, your host, and I'm here with my colleague, co-host Sarah Sitak, and we're really excited to be talking about a subject that has touched the life and livelihood of almost every woman throughout history and time, and it will continue to do so unfavorably until we learn to openly talk and learn about it, to accept it, to address it, so that we can effectively manage it. Sarah, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about menopause.
Yes, ladies, menopause. And there is no one more qualified, more passionate, more experienced in this subject matter than our amazing guest. And I love to say this, amazing woman, a world-renowned healthcare expert and author of Manage Your Menopause Naturally. And may I add, just 27 other books, just 27. Maryon Stewart. Welcome, Maryon. We're so honored to have you share your wisdom and knowledge with us. I mean, you've helped tens of thousands of women around the world overcome PMS and menopause symptoms without using drugs or hormones. And your credibility and influence is shown by your publications, your accolades. And I mean, in 2018, you were awarded the British Empire Medal and recognized as one of the 50 most inspirational women by the Daily Mail. Wow. Sarah?
That's
wow,
amazing.
Right?
Oh, more than wow. I mean, if I may add, Maryon is also a pioneer of the natural menopause movement.
Yes, so she is.
We're so excited here. I can't believe it.
Really are.
We're big fans, and we can't wait to share this with all of our listeners.
Excellent.
We really are, Maryon. And you know, menopause, Maryon, no one talks about menopause. I mean, we should, but no one does. And tell us a bit about yourself and why menopause. What inspired you to start helping women through their menopause?
That's a very good question. And thank you so much for the introduction. It sounds amazing, although it's just been my life, really, and my passion, as you said in the beginning, to help women. And I started out in the beginning I was on maternity leave, and my husband at the time was a doctor, and he and 3 others were setting up the British Society for Nutritional Medicine, because I was originally living in England. And they gave me 10,000 medical papers to sort into conditions. And I found 200 on PMS, and it was all the natural approach to PMS, which blew me away. Mm-hmm. And to cut a very long story short, we ended up setting up an advisory service by accident because the media got to hear that we were helping women locally. And we then were inundated with literally sacks full of mail before the days of email, wow. Literally sacks full of mail every day, and terrible suffering. And because our program helped 94% of women be symptom-free within 4 months, and I mean completely symptom-free, so they didn't know when their period was coming. So they went from being even suicidal, violent, aggressive, feeling like the worst version of themselves, to feeling so normal every day. And so it made me feel there was a huge sense of injustice, that doctors aren't educated, women are not, no one joins the dots, and they're just out there, and it wrecks their self-esteem, their relationships, their ability to parent and hold their jobs down in the workplace. And then in 1990, the first publication came on the natural menopause, which was published in the British Medical Journal. It was a study done in Australia, and the next year there was another study in the Lancet, which is a really prestigious medical journal, on natural menopause. And so I decided I'd just tweak my PMS program, and turn it into a menopause program as well. And that's what we did. And then we carried on helping women. I carried on writing books, doing broadcasting. I had my own TV show, and I used to write regularly for Daily Mail and lots of other publications. And eventually in I think it was 2016, I remarried my lovely American husband, and I was in Florida, not really knowing what to do because I'd taken a break from my health career to run a campaign in memory of my daughter. And I'd come back to health without my TV show and my columns and everything, thinking, what do I do next? And I got introduced to a film producer who, by chance, if you believe in chance, the next day was doing a Facebook Live course. And so I decided I was non-techie, so I'd go on that. And I made 2 films on my phone, which looked like I was looking through a fisheye lens. I put them on Facebook and created a Facebook group. And she made me promise faithfully I'd make 2 more films in the next fortnight, in the next 2 weeks. And blow me down if within 12 weeks, over 1 million women saw those ridiculous films. Wow. And I was inundated with the most awful suffering. And so I realized that the universe was shouting menopause.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And it was actually that a bit later, about 6 months later, there was a publication which was a government report on menopause in the workplace in the UK. And it was a review of 104 medical papers over 26 years, starting in 1990, which is when I started helping women going through menopause. And honestly, when I reviewed the review, there was hardly any mentions of the solution. It was mainly focused on the problem. Yes. And I just got angry all over again and felt this is just not right. You know, women can't be left to fend for themselves. They can't be left to hang out to dry and be bowled over by their hormones in their prime, especially as the world needs their wisdom so badly. And so I decided that we would, by then I had a Facebook group with thousands of women in it. We did some focus groups because Facebook didn't have a memory. So I was saying the same thing over and over and trying to make films that we were losing. In the end, we decided to set up a 6-week course. And what I did was our 5-month program, which was a bit like the 4-month PMS program, that was helping 91% of women be symptom-free within 5 months, was all based on medical research. And so I thought, well, if I take the medical research, split it into 6 modules, I can teach groups of women, and that's the way I can reach large numbers of women. I can teach groups of women about the science so they can manage their menopause naturally.
Wow, that's amazing.
What I thought we were going to do, but actually, even in 6 weeks, we realized we were turning women's lives around. They were going from not sleeping for more than 2 hours to sleeping all night.
Yeah.
Being hot to the point of being embarrassed and melting to not having any hot flushes, not feeling anxious, not aching, you know, and really seeing a big light at the end of the tunnel. And it's been an incredible journey. So we've developed some tech. And so now the course is accessible on your phone or any device. And we are in the process of making it even more sophisticated so that eventually we'll be able to use AI to help millions of women globally with personalized solutions. And in the meantime, I've been invited since the launch of my new book, Managing Menopause Naturally, I've been invited to put together a 10-part TV series here in the US. Which will actually stream globally.
We can't wait.
But it's also, hopefully it's going to be on TV all over the US as well. So that is really, really exciting. And we're working with companies to help women in the workplace, educating executives and line managers, because Forbes says it costs $810 billion globally each year due to lost productivity associated with menopause.
I'm sorry, Maryon, say that number again. How much productivity? Say that because I want people to understand that is a huge number. How many zeros are behind that?
$810 billion.
Billion. That's amazing.
It's astounding. And the other astounding statistic is that in 2019 also, there was a Mayo Clinic survey on doctors and gynecologists in the US showing that only 7% of them felt adequately educated to help women going through menopause.
Well,
I can totally see that in the United States. Yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But Maryon, you know, this is amazing. If maybe we can dive into it a little bit. But before we do that, I want our audience, our listeners, to just understand the impact of it. I mean, there was a statistic out there that in 2020, so last year, more than 50 million women are going through menopause in the United States. And that's US only, which is a huge number, right? And it's estimated that 1 billion women around the world will be experiencing menopause globally by 2025. 1 billion women. I mean, that's huge.
That's humongous.
So we need to share your intellect, your research, and all the work that you've done, maybe we can just, I mean, one of the basic questions, and I think that is like, what does menopause mean? What's perimenopause? What's postmenopause? Let's start from the beginning of what does this even mean? What is it? Because I think we use it when we go to our doctors, they're like, oh, you're not in menopause yet. Well, what am I in? What is menopause? How long does menopause last? Like, what is this?
That's true. They check your they check your hormones and they tell you, oh, you're not even in perimenopause and you're almost hitting 50, So
they are, there's such a lack of education, and that's such a good point to raise. I gave a talk the other day, and the person who was hosting the program said, well, I'm 46 and I realized reading all your material that I'm going through perimenopause, and I didn't know before. And I've been talking to all my friends who are in their 40s, and none of them have ever heard the term perimenopause. So I realized that there is a massive education gap. And interestingly, in the last survey we did on 1,100 women, 96% of them said they felt unprepared for menopause, and 2/3 of them felt robbed of life as they knew it. So menopause is just one day, believe it or not. It's the anniversary of your last period. And the perimenopause lasts for up to 8 years, and that's the 8 years leading up to menopause. And the average age of menopause is 51. And the next day, you are postmenopausal for the rest of your life. And most women do not understand that. I was actually doing a book signing in Australia in a theatre at Menopause the Musical, which is a hysterical show. And
we got to check it out.
Yeah, I was in the foyer listening to all these women having conversations, and I heard them say, been there, done that, and got the T-shirt. And I'm thinking, well, no, you haven't, because you're not magically going to feel better the next day after your menopause, because you've got low levels of nutrients and empty estrogen receptor sites, and you're going to go downhill and feel worse than you can imagine if you don't do something about it. And that's why there's this massive need for education, not just because of the symptoms that you think about when you think about menopause, like hot flashes and night sweats and irritability and loss of sleep and aches and pains and all of that stuff, not to mention what goes on below the waist. But after menopause, because we're now living so much longer than ever before, we are much more predisposed to things like osteoporosis, the bone thinning disease, which is actually a silent killer, by the way. And heart disease, which we're more predisposed to than men after menopause, and dementia. And the research shows that you can prevent all of those things if you learn how to meet your needs. And that's why, as an aging population, we are so in need of this knowledge that can turn our lives around, literally.
Maryon, why don't you share with us some of those symptoms that we generally wouldn't recognize? I mean, I think nowadays, a lot of us are like, oh, are we just getting older? What's wrong with me? I don't understand. I feel anxious. I'm tired. What are some of those perimenopause symptoms that women generally don't recognize as, oh, this is perimenopause?
Well, if you think about PMS, and we know that about 3/4 of women experience PMS, where you feel irritable, sometimes aggressive, sometimes feel like you could kill someone. You feel so tired and out of sorts.
Been there.
Well, it's that with bells on, really. So you have that more days a month. And you can, in addition to that, start to lose control of your thermometer. So you start feeling hot when it's not actually hot. And you just wonder if the air conditioning is not working properly. Just feeling that you're having restless sleep, because what's happening in your body, let's talk about that, and then you'll understand a bit more why this is happening. You've got two main things going on in your body. One is your nutrient levels take a real big nosedive, especially after you've had babies and breastfed or been on a diet, had too much alcohol, lived life in the fast lane. We know from research that billions of women have got nutritional deficiencies, and no one educates us about that. We're born as a baby girl with millions of eggs, but we have no roadmap. So we don't learn about how to meet our needs at any stage in our life, anywhere. So when you get to midlife, you absolutely need what I call a midlife refuel. You need to learn how to meet your needs so that you can get your nutrients back into an optimum range, because when they're not in a good range, it affects your brain chemistry and your hormone function adversely. So you're effectively firing on 2 cylinders instead of 4. You're like a bucket with a hole in it, and at best you're in economy mode. So libido goes out the window, so does your energy, and you just feel that you can't really experience joy in the way that you did before. So that's kind of perimenopause. It creeps up on you. Some days you may feel better than others. I should add that 20% of women, according to research, don't have any symptoms. So that's not everyone in the same bucket. That's and some people get milder symptoms and other people get very severe symptoms to the point where they even think about ending their lives and certainly leave the workplace unnecessarily. So it can be a very difficult transition. And that's the other thing. It's a transition. It's only a short period of time. But if you don't learn to meet your needs, it can go on forever. I've had patients in their 70s, and I shared a platform last week with a doctor, a gynecologist, who had patients in her 80s who are still having hot flushes and night sweats. Because if you don't learn to correct... So the first thing is the nutritional deficiencies. The second thing is that when your ovaries are no longer producing estrogen, you have empty estrogen receptors. And the brain doesn't like that, because 100 years or so ago, we were only living to 50. And it didn't matter because your ovaries packed up at the same time you did. But now that 40-something represents halfway for so many of us, so important to fill those receptor sites for so many reasons. Firstly, when you fill the receptor sites, because the molecule looks so similar to estradiol, the estrogen you have in your body before menopause, you can literally fool the brain into thinking that you've got normal circulating estrogen. That's the first thing. So that's amazing. Mother Nature's little treat for us. But filling the receptor sites is important because it triggers new bone growth. Before menopause, you're losing about 3% of your bone a year, but you're making 3% because of your estrogen. And when you have no estrogen, you're just losing bone. And the same thing, it protects you against heart disease. It protects you against dementia. So it's not just helping with your menopause symptoms, and it keeps your skin nice and supple. And also those important little places, because the first study that I mentioned that I was published in the British Medical Journal in 1990 took a group of women and fed them flax seeds, red clover and soy, and found they were able to bring about similar changes in the lining of the vagina as in women taking HRT. So it has, it reaches the parts if you learn how to meet your needs at this important life stage.
So those are the phytoestrogens you talk about in your book, right, Maryon?
Yes.
Very good. So let's talk about sex. The decrease in the sex drive, libido. I mean, this is very important. Sex is very important. And in your book, you talk about this and about the midlife refuel. So tell us a little bit about this phase and how it impacts our sex drive.
Yes, exactly. I think that's because when you say let's talk about sex, people are probably having a heart sink moment, because our survey showed that our relationship survey showed that 70% of women feel completely switched off from the waist downwards. Yeah. And depending on the study you look at, 50 to 70% of them have got vaginal dryness, and that means that sex is painful. Right. So when they're busy having the hot flashes and the night sweats and feeling anxious, and then they're contemplating having sex, which will be painful, sometimes to the point of bleeding, sex can very easily be off the menu. But what women don't understand, and they mourn the loss of themselves as well, and that phase of their lives. And it's so, so sad, because when you learn to meet your needs, the research shows that you can make those cells that produce the mucus in the vagina, you can heal the tissues, you can get your libido back, and sex can be great after menopause. And usually your kids are a bit older and you may have a little bit more time on your hands, so you can rekindle all those lovely times that you had in the past and have new experiences going forward that are just as memorable as the old ones, rather than it being the end. It really isn't the end of life as you knew it. It's actually a whole new beginning if you learn to meet your needs. And we've got a little film on my website, which is, we made a few films with 10 women talking about their transition. And one of them was a professor. In fact, if you remember, I mentioned that report with the government publication on menopause in the workplace in the UK. I met her at a conference because she was one of the professors who was co-author. And she confided in me and said that she felt that she had early dementia and she was about to leave the workplace. She was also depressed and tired and achy. She had constipation and acne on her face for the first time in her life, and just was feeling like a shadow of her former self. And so I invited her to come on our program. And honestly, within the space of a couple of months, she was turbocharged. She was completely symptom-free.
That's wonderful.
I love it.
Came back, her skin was clear, everything was normal. And eventually, instead of leaving the workplace, imagine that, she became head of department at her university.
Wow.
And now
That's
she's
fantastic.
doing research on women's health, which will
I
change
love
the
it.
lives of many other women around the world. So when you see stories like that, you can't help but be passionate about the fact that every woman needs this information to transform her life and get herself back to being the best version of herself.
That's so true. And back to the statistics, Maryon, you talked about the $810 billion loss in productivity. And all I can think about is, are our politicians and economists listening to this? What are they doing about this?
I don't think they've got a clue. I think it goes under the radar. Yeah. We did a study on 1,000 women in the workplace, and 84% of them said that their productivity was affected for more than 8 days a month. And there's been a study that was published here. I think it was at MIT. I can't remember where it was published, but it showed that it was costing $6,500, I think, per woman per year in lost productivity. So if you add that
Easily.
up. And what we don't want is, we don't want the men in the workforce to turn around and say that women in the workforce are not worthy when they reach menopause. We want to give them a solution so that they get back to being the very best version of themselves and the most productive, so they can continue on the corporate ladder. Because otherwise, replacing talent is very expensive. And also, as you mentioned before, there are so many millions and millions of women that it would just break the economy. So not just for the women's sake and their family's sake and what goes on in the bedroom, but we also need to be doing this for the sake of the economy.
Yeah. But, Maryon, what I really liked is the positive nature in which you were speaking. And I think that was wonderful, to show women that there's light at the end of the tunnel in many ways, not only in their relationship, but feeling good about themselves and productivity. Tell us more about the plus side of menopause and your 6-week program. I mean, I'd love to hear more, because I just loved. I got such a warm feeling when you were talking about it in a positive way. It is just a continuation. It could be a continuation of a wonderful life, and not. And so I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's not just a continuation of a wonderful life. It's actually almost like a rebirth. Because
wonderful. I like that.
I love it.
I love that.
If you're anything like me, I had 4 children. I was busy with all those books, running an advisory service. When do you get time for yourself?
Oh, never.
Put everybody else first. It's not until you fall over that you have to focus on yourself. So I think, in a way, the fact that you go down slowly, you don't realize how far down you've gone until you bounce back up again. So what we see on our program, which is, as I said, 6 weeks, everyone gets a personalized program written for them. And then they can come through it as a group, or they can be one-to-one if they prefer. But the group is nice because they come together as a little community, and they all support each other as well as having our support.
I like that.
And then we work with them every single week, and they have all their course materials to get through, which is not too onerous. It's just short little films and little bits to read in magazine style format. So it's not like they have to spend hours and hours every week. And we brainstorm and we just review their progress and get them through. So even in 6 weeks, as I said before, they are better than they can remember. Honestly, I mean, they're queuing up to come and meet me on social media to talk about how they feel like a completely different person. I can remember one woman not that long ago or a couple of years ago, she was literally curled up in a ball. Somebody introduced me to her and said, please, can you help her? She is suicidal and cannot go outside her bedroom, let alone her house. And I worked with her, and literally in 6 weeks, she was not only feeling normal and happy, but she'd also managed to get herself a dream job. I mean, it doesn't always happen that quickly, because I don't have a magic wand. And it does take about 3 months to get your nutrients back into an optimum range. So really, going back to what I was saying before, it really is a 5-month program. But even in 6 weeks, you can see a massive change. Things that take longer are vaginal dryness and libido. That takes a few months, but it comes back gradually. And it's just a great story. And I'm saddened that women don't learn about this early enough to prevent going down what I call the rabbit hole. Because if you're armed with knowledge and our bone mass reaches its peak by the time we're 35. So if you're armed with knowledge in your 30s and you can keep on meeting your needs in your 40s, you're going to cruise through menopause and into postmenopause. You may need to tweak what you're doing a bit, because as your receptor sites empty, you need to fill them up again with naturally occurring estrogen. And there are tons of supplements that have been through clinical trials. I should also say there are tons of supplements that haven't, and you'll see them on the shelves in pretty packets and pots, but they don't even contain what they say on the label. So it is really important that you find the right science and then you can follow it. And that's why I've put everything together in the new book, Manage Menopause Naturally, because it's got all the references in it, but it's in people speak, and you can follow easily and pick out what you need to do. If you're suffering mildly to moderately, you can do it yourself. And if you're suffering moderately to severely and you feel you need some extra help and support, then there's a 6-week program. So there's something for everybody, and women literally do not need to suffer. And I think it was Nairy that said about the women who suffer, but actually our survey on men showed that men suffer too, because they're looking at understanding. They feel
dealing with us.
Yeah. They feel scared to have a conversation, and they feel frustrated. And it's really important that men learn about this too, so that they can nurture their partners and help them through it. And they'll come through it together stronger as a couple. Really important. So if a woman's tossing and turning all night, waking up 7 times in the night, and her partner's next to her, then he's going to have a disturbed, or she's going to have a disturbed night. It's not just the person going through it that is affected.
That's right.
It's very important to get everything you're saying, to be mindful about it, because honestly, it hurts when we see women, like you said, go down the rabbit hole and destroy their lives. They make rash decisions. All of a sudden, the family's broken and they're broken. And then, it's all about the hormonal imbalances that we don't know what's happening because we don't have the education. And here in the United States, Maryon, in the healthcare system, every intervention is pharmaceutical intervention. That's the first thing that we go to. So what are your thoughts on hormone replacement therapy? And the next question is, can women who take hormone replacement therapy follow your recommendations as well? And why would they need to?
Okay, so you can do both together. You can do them in parallel, because taking hormone replacement therapy does not correct nutritional deficiencies. Mm-hmm. And that's a big part of it. So you've got to do the two things together. It will meet the needs of the estrogen receptors, but it's not really a long-term treatment as far as most doctors are concerned. I know there's some differings of opinion, but there are some side effects. And with the natural approach, and in fact, 90% of the women in our last survey said that they would like to learn how to manage their menopause naturally. And you'll be surprised, there's only a small number of women in the US who do opt to take HRT. In our last survey as well, we looked at, in fact, it was another survey on what women want. We looked at what is going on in terms of prescriptions, and 37% of the women were prescribed antidepressants by their doctors for menopause. And 37. Over 80% of them said that wasn't appropriate because they weren't clinically depressed. And 41% were prescribed HRT. This was in the UK, where it is more widely prescribed. But out of those, 14% didn't take it because they were too scared or didn't feel it was appropriate. And of the ones who did take it, 61% came off it because of adverse side effects. And it can cause weight gain and make your migraines worse and all sorts of things. So a lot of women choose not to take it. If you do choose to take it, that's fine too, but you still need to learn to meet your nutritional needs in the long term. And I've never needed to use it with my patients because our program is so effective. And it's just, obviously natural and doesn't have any side effects.
Yeah. And the HRT, it has side effects. We learn about the increased probability of breast cancer, endometrial cancer. So it's really good to know that there's an alternative way of doing things naturally and having actually better results.
Yes, I think so, because this affects every single part of you. And it's a great feeling to know that you're doing it naturally. That's right. You're using Mother Nature's tools and you're being empowered and supported by other women. And we're going through this. It's like a sisterhood in a way. And I think over the years, in the next 5 years, we're looking at changing the paradigm. So instead of this ghastly menopause word, we are going to change that into midlife, and everybody will come to know that they're entitled to a midlife refuel in their 40s
right.
as
That's
a passive right. And that's it.
I love that.
Shame. No. And, just get yourself turbocharged so you can go into the next phase of your life in the most awesome way.
I love the term that you used earlier. It's a rebirth. And to me, it's very positive. Maryon, what do you hope that women take away from your book, Manage Your Menopause Naturally?
Well, hope is the first thing, because for the first time, maybe they're going to know that they can do a U-turn and reclaim their well-being. But I get messages all the time on social media from people who have read the book and say it was life-changing, even in the space of a few weeks. So I think you can dive in there and find the things that are going to work for you. The 6-week course materials, pretty much, not entirely, but there's a lot in there. So I've got the first part of it is the 6-week course. So you've got all information about different parts of menopause. And at the back of the book, you've got charts where you can fill in all the things that you need to be following. So you're creating your own program, which is the kind of programs that we write for people. And then it goes on to looking at things like bone health and sex and heart health and mindset and all of that kind of stuff as well. So I try and cover everything you need to know to manage your menopause naturally and come out the other end of it feeling, as one of the women in my film said, practically a new woman. So that's
right. I love that.
I love it.
I love that.
A new phenomenal woman. And I can't wait for that day that, there's no taboo around this subject.
Right.
That women can openly, society can openly talk about it. And I know, Maryon, you have a movement going forward. And Sarah and I would love to join your movement. And definitely. many other women. Yes, we need to do this, ladies. We need to do this. Absolutely.
Yes, we're going to be doing a campaign, a public health campaign at the same time as the TV series, so that we will be campaigning about the need for change. And I'd love to have you as part of the campaign. It would be amazing.
I would love to.
You've got us supporting your campaign.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Well, Maya Angelou once said, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty." And ladies, just as the caterpillar goes through a period of change to turn into a butterfly, the changes we as women go throughout our menopausal years may be challenging, but they all work together to help us become who we're meant to be, simply beautiful. And we don't have to go through this alone anymore, or in the dark. You now have access to one of the best resources out there, a pioneer in this field who has dedicated herself and made it her life mission to help us women thrive and live normal, happy lives during our menopausal years. Her 6-week, like she just spoke about, her 6-week natural menopause solution course can take us from feeling stressed, washed out, irritable, and confused by hormonal turmoil to feeling sexy, wise, intuitive, calm, and brimming with happy hormones. Maryon, thank you so much for this amazing talk and valuable information you shared with us. Please tell us how to access your book and your 6-week course and your final thoughts with our women.
By all means. So the book is available on Amazon and should be in any bookseller. If you go to my website, which is maryonstewart.com, and it's MaryonStewart.
Ani, can we please put that on the screen?
Okay, so maryonstewart.com, then click on solutions, and there's a drop-down menu, and you'll see the 6-week solution. And it talks about what happens in each week and how you can sign up for it. So that's that. And then the other thing I have, which we started in January, is the Midlife Refuel Club. And that's free to join.
I love that.
And we have live sessions every week. And we have sometimes guest speakers as well. But it's also got my content library in there. So you can go in and access films and webinars and downloads and things for men, all sorts of things in there, and come and join the live sessions and get your questions answered. So lots of hands-on stuff in there. And that will be becoming part of the TV campaign as well.
Well, that's fabulous.
That's wonderful.
Any last words, last minute words of wisdom to our audience?
Well, I think for women to understand that they don't need to suffer and that this can be a whole new beginning and open the door to amazing relationships and achievements in the workplace, and to just take time to let that sink in, because it's obviously a completely different mindset to the mindset that they've probably had up until now, just because they didn't know about it.
That's awesome. Sarah, anything you want to say?
No, I'm just amazed, Maryon, with everything that you've done and the gift that you've actually given to all of us women out there. I cannot wait to be a part of your campaign and get the news out to women. And I love the positivity that you're bringing to this topic. So I hope our listeners will also reach out, check you out on, all the social media, and take a look at your book as well.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. We can't wait to work with you. We can't wait to join your movement. I think every woman out there needs to. We're all going to be affected by this. Our children, our daughters are. So thank you, Maryon. Thank you for being this pioneer. We bless you. God bless you. We needed, a woman like you to lead us. Right. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And again, please remember to always follow us on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the Avanti Woman. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.